The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 5, titled The Pirate, has debuted on Disney Plus. We're going to talk about what we liked about the episode, where we think it's going, and a couple of little Easter eggs. And we're going to do that right now on the Sundowners Club. Welcome. I'm your host, Sean, my co-host, Sterling. So, Sterling, we've been dragging a little bit going through this Mandalorian Season 3, first 4 episodes, feeling like it's taken forever for the real story to take off, right? We've talked about things we liked and haven't liked in the first 4 episodes and how average it's been. And it's really been lacking a villain, and it's been lacking a cohesive story. And I feel like when we just watched Episode 5, we finally got a sense of what are the major beats of this season ultimately going to be. The villains potentially starting to be drawn out in terms of Moff Gideon, and I really liked the episode. It got me interested again, and I'll talk about why as we go through the episode. But what were your initial thoughts? Episode 5, The Pirate.
I thought it was the best episode of the season, for sure. I think it was actually entertaining. It didn't have any cringe-inducing moments.
The most cohesive.
Yeah. And it was cool watching the Mandalorians come in there, and you got to see how capable they were. And yeah, it was definitely the best of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. My initial concern around the Pirate King, Gorian Shard, when we first saw him, I was laughing a little bit. It was like I had green grass, but he was a little cooler this time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's Star Wars has always done that. They always create new characters and aliens out of nowhere. So I mean, it feels like the show's starting to feel like a live action version of the animated shows. You know what I mean? For better or worse.
No doubt.
And I think that kind of calls back to that. And he was a fun character. I mean, I didn't mind him.
Well, they used a plot device that the original movies used that was always really good, and the prequels did too, is when you have someone on a hologram and they come in, and like Grief Karga, at the beginning of the episode, we see Navarro, and we have Grief Karga is trying to lay out plans for the business district and the trade coming in, and all of a sudden he hears people screaming. He goes to the window, and he sees the Pirate King's ship overhead, and he knows it's Gorian Shard. And so we have a little bit of an Easter egg, a callback to the original trilogy. He speaks to Gorian Shard, and Shard comes on the hologram, and he's a little more menacing this time. He's like, look, you are not part of the New Republic. You're not protected by Moff Gideon, and, you're going to surrender. And so then he makes a recording himself and puts it in the R5 unit. And I thought that was a little bit of a playback to Princess Leia, because he leans over and puts it in to send the message off. And then we see a bombardment, right? So Shard basically says, I'm taking over this planet, and Navarro. And so you see all the shots start to ring down, and from what we saw in the earlier season trailer of the Battle of Navarro, so we knew that was coming. And then we have an interesting moment, which was really, really cool for me to see as someone who watched Star Wars Rebels. We see a Rebel base, and we see the character Captain Teva that we've seen in a couple other episodes in a smaller role, but now he's in a cantina. They're in a bar type, barracks type situation, playing the Rebel, not Rebel, but the New Republic soldiers are playing games and hanging out, and Captain Teva gets this message from Grief Karga asking for help. And all of a sudden, we see a Star Wars Rebels character, animated character, who's now come to live action, and it is Zeb. So Zeb Aurelios shows up. He's completely CGI as far as I saw it, and he looked really good. And we'll put images of Zeb up on the screen, and then in comparison to the animated character, so that you can see what we're talking about. Now, you didn't watch Star Wars Rebels, so that didn't really jump out at you, but I don't know if you also noticed there were 3 characters sitting on the end of the bar, and it was Dave Filoni, Deborah Chow, and Rick Famuyiwa, 3 directors. And the only reason I noticed is because you could see Filoni's cowboy hat. And so I'm sure they all just wanted little cameos to show the family or whatever. But we had that original scene, and you know what it felt like? it felt like a scene that was originally written for Cara Dune when Grief is reaching out for help and tying in with the Rangers of the New Republic or something. So it's like he's reaching out to Captain Teva, and you're like, why? Like, so it kind of seemed to me like a replacement for Cara Dune. She would be hanging out with fellow soldiers and then get this message and then be brought in to help. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like to me, but didn't mind it so much. Captain Teva, he's fine in the role. And then he knows he needs to go to the New Republic, so he goes to Coruscant. And we see another cameo that I don't have a problem with, but it takes you out of the show a little bit. And that is Tim Meadows from Saturday Night Live. And
oh, yeah.
He's
he's a big voice actor now, isn't he?
He's done a lot of stuff, yeah. And Tim Meadows was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I guess what I did like about his character, he plays a colonel, is that he was laid back. He wasn't cracking a bunch of jokes. Mm-hmm. And he basically is just telling Captain Teva, look, we're the bureaucracy, we're so far behind. They haven't even turned in their paperwork yet for a member of the New Republic. They're going to have to fend for themselves. And then we see the character of Elia Kane show up. And I don't know if they're still trying to paint her as like, we now know she's a villain, but she's not very good at it. She goes in and starts talking about, well, maybe they need to stand on their own and just see how important it is to be part of the New Republic. And, I wasn't captured. I was liberated. And you can see that Captain Teva is not buying any of it. But as a viewer, I wasn't really buying it either. But maybe that was their intention, is that we now know that she's on the side of Moff Gideon, so there's no sense hiding that, in terms of from the viewer.
All right.
But so this scene was fine. We know that he's not going to get help, and it sets the stage for Captain Teva to go get help. And it comes in the form of the Mandalorians. And so he uses the data from the R5 unit that was originally part of the Rebellion, and that's something for people that in the expanded universe, the R5 unit had a bigger role than what we saw in the original movies. And so that's why Captain Teva would have known R5. And so he finds the Mandalorians and reaches out to them for help, and we see Din Djarin and Bo-Katan give a speech. How did you feel about the way the scenes played out with Captain Teva in the cantina and then going to Coruscant and then going to ask for the Mandalorians?
You are kind of right where it felt like maybe that scene wasn't designed for him, because it just felt kind of weird that he had a big part in the show where he's always been this minor character. But the scene where the Mandalorians show up and all that, that made the episode. So, whatever we needed to do to get to that point.
And they didn't spend a whole lot of time getting there. These scenes were edited, I think, they were done well, right?
Yeah, it was like a 40-minute episode, so
we didn't linger, and that was good.
But I enjoyed the episode overall. Like I said, it did feel a little off that he played that part, but
Well, we have Din asking for the Mandalorians to help, and then we have Bo-Katan she's being quiet. She's just kind of watching it all play out, and then you have Paz Vizsla finally steps up and says, "They saved my son. This is the way. This is what we're going to do." And so now Bo-Katan takes a leadership role. Again, you have Din, who's kind of like, what do I need to do? Oh. So Grogu, very minor. Grogu was barely in this.
Yeah, well,
this episode. I was kind of glad, to be honest with you. We've had too much Grogu.
Well, I think I did realize what my problem with this show in general is, though. Not just this show, but the Disney formula for Star Wars. And that's that most shows, they build up for their next season. That's their goal, right? This show spends most of its time building up spinoffs, different shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they've spent half this season building up a Bo-Katan show, which I think you're right. I think that's definitely what they're going to do is a Bo-Katan show. And they spent half the season focusing on that. They have, and it's
at the expense of the Mandalorian himself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you had, it's just season 2 ended on such a high note.
Yeah.
And it had sky-high expectations that, we're going to get to see Luke Skywalker in his prime. Maybe they'll do a Luke Skywalker show. They resolved that plot point in, 2 episodes in the Book of Boba Fett, a show that nobody watched.
Which a lot of people didn't watch it, so they were confused, and I think this show suffered for that.
Yeah.
And so you see Bo-Katan, building the plans, and they get on her ship, and so basically, Din is going to go with Grogu on the Naboo N1 and is going to distract the main ship and the fleet from Gorian Shar, the Pirate King, and she's going to drop the Mandalorians in, and that was cool. So she dropped the first wave in, and they started taking the town back, taking Navarro back. Mm-hmm. And one funny thing is, so Grief Karga takes the Navarrans, I guess you call them the Navarrans, and they go out because they had to flee because their city got bombarded. But they're out in the desert, or they're hidden behind by a rock, and I'm like, is this everybody that lives on Navarro? It's like 30 people. Like this is
it's
not. And the Mandalorians too, right? The Mandalorians, there's only like 30 of them.
Yeah, it's not a really big
yeah, it almost makes you feel like
feels a bit claustrophobic.
Yeah, could they have added another 200 extras and just paid them for a day or two of work and had them seem like more of a population? That was a little strange, but I mean that's a minor gripe. But so we see the wave come in, and obviously, as they're overtaking Navarro. You see Din Djarin is wiping out the rest of the fleet, weakening the ship, and then they end up ultimately taking out the ship, and Gorian Shar goes down with it. Kind of in essence, it was a little bit like a Star Destroyer that crashes. And right before that happens, you actually see the armor in a fight scene. So the armor shows up and takes out one of the gunners. And so the armor doesn't shoot lasers. She uses her armor tools, her hammers and stuff.
Beating everybody up with the hammer.
Yeah, she hit everybody with a hammer. And then we have a strange scene. So this is where the episode got good for me. So you have your typical formula, but it was just produced better, directed better, acted better, and the editing was better. And the writing was okay, was fine. And then as it gets to the end, we have 2 scenes that take this episode to the next level and get you thinking, okay, I want to see where this goes. The first scene was the armor with Bo-Katan, and the armor had said, when she mentioned the Mythosaur, the armor had kind of written it off like, okay, maybe you didn't see that, it's myth, and you don't know what you saw. Well, then the armor pulls Bo-Katan in the cave, and I still think we're going to see under the armor's helmet that maybe somehow she has a past with Bo. She's Bo's lost sister, third sister, or there's something around the armor's real identity. But nonetheless, we see Bo-Katan in the cave, and she says, you are destined to bring the Mandalorians all together that are scattered. You can take off your helmet in my presence. So she takes off her helmet, and with her permission and in her station, and then she says, it's your task to defeat the Mythosaur or find the Mythosaurs and then unite the tribes. And so they go out and they're like, wait a minute, she took her helmet off. And the armor says, look, she walks both worlds. She will unite us. So automatically that also goes to what we're talking about with the larger Bo-Katan story, which is not Din Djarin's and it's not Grogu's, which is hers if she walks the right path to say, okay, you've got to go conquer the Mythosaur and then you got to bring back the other Mandalorians.
You think they'll even do that in that show, though? That might be all for hers.
I think that she will tackle the Mythosaur and she will potentially unite the tribes, or
in the Mandalorian,
make a mistake in doing so, and Din has to clean up for her. But I do think they're going to have her have a hero's journey and unite the Mandalorians. But how much of that will they cover in this show before there's? I think the other show could go backwards and show more of the prequel stuff around Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan had a relationship with Bo-Katan's sister. And so I think there could be flashbacks in the other show.
Ewan McGregor would come back for that?
I think so.
Really?
Pay him money, he'd do it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But.
Yeah. So and then it ties into what we see at the end, which is Captain Teva is heading back, and he sees an Imperial shuttle that the hull has been breached. And he says that, this is Moff Gideon. They were transporting Moff Gideon. And we knew that he mentioned earlier in the episode that Moff Gideon never went to trial. So he sends a probe in, which is kind of cool. We hadn't seen that before with a small probe. but sends a probe in that scans the interior of the ship, and they see Beskar armor marks, shards or whatever in the ship. And so the implication is the Mandalorian, some form of Mandalorians free Gideon, because Gideon's body is not in the shuttle. So that brings up the question, were they framed? Are the Mandalorians framed for this? Or if there were Mandalorians, because we know that they're out there are other Mandalorian groups out there, who are they? And
it's going to be the group that Bo-Katan finds to go reunite them.
Right.
That's
so we do know that from the Clone Wars and afterwards and in the expanded universe that the Imperial Super Commandos were Mandalorian. They had white Beskar. And it makes me think that Moff Gideon is a Mandalorian. That's how he got the Darksaber to begin with. And that he's got a subset of the Mandalorians that have freed him. Now, it could also not be the Imperial Super Commandos, which I think it is, but it could also be the Night Owls, because we saw a few of the other Night Owls that were with Bo-Katan in Season 2, but we haven't seen them since.
Yeah, we have. That's right.
And I think, was it Sasha Banks was a wrestler that played one of the characters?
Yeah, I think so.
And
I don't
so here's a question. At the beginning of this season, we see Bo-Katan tell Din Djarin, when I didn't take the Darksaber, my group scattered. So we know that they're out there. So that's a possibility as too. And then there's a possibility they were framed. But I think we're going to see the Imperial Super Commandos that wore the white Beskar, that they were hiding on Concord Dawn in the expanded universe. And I believe it's going to finally tell us who Moff Gideon was and is. He came from Mandalore. And that's how he ended up with the Darksaber. That's my prediction, to go along with my prediction that Bo-Katan is going to be part of that Ghost Track 17 series that will be announced. They're doing a lot of press right now with Katie Sackhoff, and so they're putting a lot of investment in her, and so one would think with the lack of original ideas coming from Lucasfilm these days, they had this idea for the Rangers of the New Republic, and they didn't want to just discard all that, so the show gets canceled when they let Gina Carano go. And they take remnants of those stories and they plug them into The Mandalorian. I like the episode. I like where it's going, that we finally are going to get into Moff Gideon and the villain, and then Bo-Katan and the fight for unification of the Mandalorians. We have 3 episodes left this season. I liked it. I give it 7.5 out of 10. Again, I'm an easy sell, but I enjoyed it. Your thoughts? You said you thought it was the best episode
of this season. Yeah, I'd give it a 7. Yeah, it was good. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how excited I am. I mean, are you excited about Moff Gideon?
It depends on his story. I mean, if it ties around Mandalore and I like that. But again, Giancarlo Esposito is a phenomenal actor. So give him screen time with Din Djarin. Give him screen time with Katie Sackhoff. Right. And you put those good actors together, and it could be good. Here, what my biggest problem with Mandalorian this season is, and it didn't bother me this episode because I think we needed a break. It is that Grogu is still gurgling like a baby, and we just figured out that he spent at least a year or 2 with Luke training, and at some point I want Grogu to grow a little bit, to develop. Grogu is basically the same character he was in the first season. Yeah. So again, that's not going to make me not want to watch the show or not like it, but I'm wanting to see Grogu's character develop. I'm wanting to see, just because he's the baby, I want to see him develop. I want to see
how relevant can he be though? I mean, you can't expect him to be this.
They're building armor for him. She just made him a chest plate.
But if they follow Star Wars canon, this takes place before the new trilogy. You never heard of him. He wasn't a part of any of those events. So how? I mean, it's not like he's going to be the next Yoda, or he would have had something to do with.
Right.
So that's what I don't understand. There's no way to really make him that relevant when he wasn't a part of.
I think you can if he's not part of the New Republic versus the rise of the First Order type stuff, or the remnants of the Empire. I think if you give them stories that go beyond the Outer Rim, just like you did with Ezra and Thrawn. It can be explained with good writing, but I understand what you're saying. My main issue has been the lack of growth and development of these characters, aside from Bo-Katan.
It's because they spend so much time creating setups for other shows.
Right. So that's suffered, and again, I don't know that they can fix that this season. But this episode was a good step back in the right direction to give us 3 episodes to wrap this season up and develop the story arc and around the villain and where this whole thing is going. And so I liked it. Hopefully you guys will give us your thoughts. If you liked what we talked about today, let us know. If you didn't like it, let us know that as well. Leave us a comment below. Hit the like button. And most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can grow our channel. House of the Dragon, we love the first season. And one of the things we loved about the first season was that it felt a lot more like the original 3, 4, 5 first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, consisting of 10 episodes. The story flowed well and written very well. And now we have news, according to Deadline, that they are shortening the season 2 episode length of 10 episodes down to 8. So first of all, without knowing anything else, what are your thoughts around going from 10 episodes that we had in season 1 to 8 in season 2, knowing that we're probably only going to have 4 seasons of House of the Dragon?
Well, I mean, hopefully we won't have a whole lot of filler, but yeah, it's kind of concerning. It took them, we got shorter episodes in Game of Thrones, I think, around the, 6, 7 seasons?
7 was 7 episodes, and 8 was 6, right?
Yeah, so they're already doing that in season 2. I know they had a lot of budget cuts, so that's probably got something to do with it, I would imagine.
Could be.
But, yeah, I don't think that's good news.
Well, and I think once we see the runtime of the episodes, we could see that episode 7 runs 119 or an hour and 19 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, they could make up for it by just adding
some time.
10 minutes an episode, which would be fine. But
so here's the thought process behind it, and I don't know that I totally disagree with this on why they're saying publicly that they're cutting it down to 8 episodes. The HBO is saying that they did not reveal the episode order when they did the season 2 announcement this summer. The initial plan was for a 10-episode arc, but it's changed now, leading to some script rewrites. Given the leadership change to HBO's parent company, some pointed at Warner Brothers for the cost-cutting measures. But it's been reported that the creative team had envisioned the season running for 3 to 4 seasons, which we've talked about, and the series, each season is going to be tied to big moments and big battles. And so when you look at the way they had the show mapped out, it could be that from a narrative flow, they have a way to tie up season 2 and move a big battle that was supposed to be in season 2 into the beginning of season 3. And that way it would be more cohesive.
They usually don't do that, though. I mean, Game of Thrones always has the big battles for the end of the season.
Yeah, there are several really big battles in Fire and Blood that they have to put on screen. What this does, though, is the rumors are that it will lead to a quicker green light for season 3, which that was a problem I had with season 1 was this thing was a big hit. You should have already been in production on season 2, but they held off on announcing it. So now they're saying this could lead to a faster green light for season 3 in the script rights because they would already have stuff ready to go that they pushed out of season 2 that's already written. So that allows them to move forward a little faster so we don't have this big gap between season 1 and season 2
right,
and season 2 and season 3. And I think that's what they're trying to get to that. And so, looking at the way they would spread out the battles, I don't have as big a problem with it. If I see the run times are fair enough to where you see episode 7 in season 2 is an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes, and then episode 8 is an hour and 15 minutes, and all of a sudden you go, okay, we picked up almost another hour between them. Again, I'm like you. If the story moves along and it's cohesive and it's quality, I can give on an episode or 2. If it would get in there and it's like that was a filler episode. Then you start to feel like
Stuff just feels like it wasn't earned naturally. I mean,
Right.
that's what happened with the original Game of Thrones. So I mean,
but I think now that they're talking about a 4-season arc, and so hopefully with this news, according to Deadline, that they've cut the episodes down from 10 to 8 for season 2. This will lead to good news, which will be a green light of season 3 quickly, which would lead into early pre-production and getting the scripts all written and have time to have the revisions and the editing, so it's really tight. And then we won't have to wait as long between season 2 and season 3. That being said, I don't like it when they cut it down. I'm used to seeing on HBO, Game of Thrones, the 10-episode seasons. I got used to that, right? Your mind gets used to it, and so I don't like it. But it is what it is, and we'll see. We know some of the major beats for season 2 that we've talked about with Blood and Cheese, and then finally seeing Winterfell again, and so we'll see what happens. I'm not thrilled with the news. Sounds like you're not thrilled with it, but it is what it is. And I think they're breaking it up around some of the bigger battles. And I do think there's truth to what you were saying, which is with budget cuts, I bet you they said, look, we're going to spend a lot of money on this huge battle. Mm-hmm. Let's put that at the beginning of season 3 where we can budget that for a different fiscal year. That will not surprise me if that's one of the main causes for that. But speaking of Game of Thrones, our next topic that we want to talk about real quick is that Cersei herself, Cersei Lannister, a.k.a. the actress Lena Headey, is going to be starring in a new Netflix series that is set in the 1850s America around Oregon and the West. And it's going to be, the showrunner for it is going to be Kurt Sutter, who those of you may or may not know. Did you watch Sons of Anarchy?
I did, yeah.
So I was a big fan of that show. I like that show. I don't like how it ended, but I like the show. I love.
Did you watch the spinoff series? I didn't watch that.
I watched the first season of Mayans.
Yeah, is it good or not?
It was okay. I think I had a lot of things going on, and it's one of those shows I probably need to go back and revisit. But I did enjoy the first season of it. It wasn't to the level of Sons of Anarchy, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy that spin on it with the Mayans. But Kurt Sutter, he did a really good job of world building at the time. I think his show suffered a little bit, even though it was a hit, with being on the wrong network. I think if that show would have been on HBO or with the way streaming is now, I think Sons of Anarchy would be a much bigger hit.
It was a pretty big hit when it came out.
It was, but I think it would have been a little bit more water cooler discussion around it because it was really good, especially with Clay in those early seasons. Mm-hmm. But Lena Headey, a great actress. I mean, you won't find a better villain, male or female, than Cersei Lannister.
Yeah,
Lena Headey, phenomenal in that role.
She's been good in everything she's been.
Yeah, she's A+ talent, and
I agree.
Anything she's in, will catch my attention. So I'm a big fan of hers. She's in real life, her personality. She's really interesting human being. So I really like Lena Headey, and so I wanted to talk about this because we've covered Yellowstone 1923 and the spinoffs that will occur from the Taylor Sheridan verse and Paramount Plus, but this one will be appearing on Netflix, and it's called The Abandons. And the synopsis for The Abandons is that a group of diverse outlier families pursue their manifest destiny in 1850s Oregon. A corrupt force of wealth and power, coveting their land, tries to force them out. These abandoned souls, the kind of lost souls living on the fringe of society, unite their tribes to form a family and fight back. In the bloody process, justice is stretched beyond the boundaries of the law. And so that will be on Netflix. And Lena Headey will be playing a matriarch. She will play a mother of 4 on the show who is driven by faith and love for her family. And so we'll see her role as that develops on the show. Is that something you think kind of plays into kind of what's going on right now with a lot of interest around the West and the cowboy type shows that are out there? Does that sound interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, all it takes is one hit in that genre, and you'll have people try to mimic that. So you said it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix,
right? Yeah, I mean, it could be good.
And with Lena Headey, she's playing Fiona, by the way. Her character will be named Fiona, and with Lena Headey involved, And with Kurt Sutter, I'm in.
That's a good start.
That's a good start. They've got me in, at least for the first few episodes. I'll watch it. I think it will play to the current Yellowstone audience, and so I'm very interested, and we will cover it. We'll at least start with it, right?
Have they announced the rest of the cast?
I don't believe they have, so
Oh.
I think that's one of the first announcements they've made. So we'll keep track of who else is involved in the show, and we'll cover it as more comes out. But we wanted to talk about that. Our next topic is we were talking about Lena Headey and Cersei Lannister. Is the Cersei Lannister of Disney Kathleen Kennedy?
Oh, certainly could be, I guess.
Well, because she's got 9 lives. But you know who doesn't have 9 lives? Well, we knew Victoria Alonso doesn't have 9 lives because she was let go last week, the head of Marvel's physical post-production and VFX animation.
Yeah.
Well, today, Marvel's chairman, Ike Perlmutter, is out at Disney. So you're the Marvel guy. You're the X-Men guy. You know, and if it offends anybody that wants to call them mutants, Sterling will be the one to set you on the right path there. They are the X-Men.
Yeah, get over it.
And so, get over it. Ike Perlmutter, so you're familiar with Ike. I am a little bit. I know he was the chairman. He was involved when they sold to Disney and Iger.
He's one of the old school Marvel guys.
Yeah.
I actually liked Ike. I don't think that's a good thing that they're getting rid of him.
What do they lose in losing Ike?
Well, I mean, we've talked about, I guess, and we've kind of mentioned this, like Marvel has gotten obnoxiously progressive, I think, in a lot of things. And Ike was kind of the counter to that. But I mean, even under his leadership, that he's really not been able to do anything. Like it didn't seem like he was able to solve anything. But I mean, he was, from my understanding, was against that. He was more for like classic stories with the classic characters.
Or at least don't go down a certain road at the expense of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, he's also 80 years old. So,
yeah.
I mean, you can say it could have been one of those situations where he was about done anyways.
Well, it's a little Game of Thronesian from Iger that, Ike tried to bring in Nelson Peltz to take a board seat, and that got negotiated down and to where Nelson backed away, and Iger...
Well, supposedly Iger had said some things that had Nelson Peltz confident where the company was going.
Right.
But, I mean, Nelson Peltz was looking at it from an investment standpoint, and from an investment standpoint, Disney has tanked. And he's like, look, we need to do something different.
We knew that they've got to cut 7,000 jobs, and we knew that this was going to start. This all is going to happen in April. So these heads are starting to roll right now.
Yeah.
So the question is, as we wrap up and talk about our last topic around Indy 5, when do we see Kathy Kennedy take her retirement tour and head out the door?
You've heard that forever, but I don't.
It seems like it's coming. Everything that we've heard, obviously she's in a little bit of a different role, but Ike's out. Several other executives under Ike are out too. The compliance officer is gone, so it looks now like they streamlined the reporting structure to where you have 1 or 2 individuals that report to Kevin Feige, who reports to Iger. So they've cut out a lot of leadership, and then there are thousands more jobs, real people with real bills to pay, real families to take care of, that are going to be out. I know a lot of the politics is talked about around Disney, and from different camps. But at the end of the day, when you talk about 5, 6, 7,000 people losing their jobs, those are people with families, and so it just shows you the position Disney's in right now, which is not a good one.
But, I mean, we saw this coming.
Like
everybody saw this coming. It's like what you're doing is not. It doesn't appeal to the fan base, to the people that you need to appeal to, which are people with families that take their kids to the movies. So
they want to escape all the problems in the world. They would go see good content, good stories, and not always feel lectured to one way or the other. But so Ike's out. Kathy Kennedy's there for now. And we wrap up today talking about Indiana Jones 5. We've covered Indiana Jones 5. It's a fascinating story. The budget is over $300+ million. That does not include marketing, which they'll conservatively spend over $100 million on. So this movie has to make at least conservatively $800 to $850 million to break even. That's conservative. If you really want to play it safe, you'd have to say it has to make $900 million. And I think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull made like $770 something when it came out years ago.
That was a different time.
Different time. So Indiana Jones 5, what they're going to do to try to kick this thing off and get some buzz, they're going to be premiering it at the Cannes Film Festival in May. And so we're going to be hearing some things around that. That'll be very interesting, that move. But, we have some other Indiana Jones 5 news as we wrap up. Disney Plus, we said they had to cut over $5 billion in spend, right? They canceled the Indiana Jones Disney Plus series. I know you're really upset at that.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, here's the thing. If the movie turned out good and they set it up, to something that would be interesting, then, that could be something I was excited about. But how they handled Willow and some of the other things, then, yeah, please just leave it alone.
Yeah, there's no Indiana Jones in the streaming series, so
no.
Don't call it Indiana Jones.
All right.
Dude, if you're going to do a series and there's a different character, it's a different series. It's not Indiana Jones. So I think it's good news that they canceled that. It's dead in the water, just like Willow season 2's dead. I think Jonathan Kazan came out and said, no, they just, we let people out of their contracts, actors, so they could go do other stuff, and we could come back to it. They're not coming back to it. It was a bomb. It's not coming back. You're going to see more of a focus on the content that they believe is going to do well, and you're not going to see an abundance of Marvel and Star Wars shows coming out. And so we'll keep track of what is real and what isn't, what's coming out, what's not, and we're going to be staying very close to the Indiana Jones 5 release and what happens around that movie, because that's going to have major ripple effects to the future of Disney, because they haven't had hits this year. They've taken it on the chin a little bit, and so the rumor about Kathy Kennedy exiting around the time of Indiana Jones 5 plays into that as well. So going to be interested to see that. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, the original movies.
Me too.
I want to see it do well. So I want to see a great Indiana Jones movie, but there's a lot of warning signs, a lot of red flags with this. We will get our first bit of information coming out of the Cannes Film Festival, and we'll be here to cover it. So if you like what you heard today, leave us a comment below, smash the like button, and most importantly, hit subscribe so that we can continue to grow our channel. And TCB.